Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have an incredible show for you today. Olayemi, who's on deck?
We're going to talk about UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's resignation, as well as the DACA case that heard arguments yesterday. And we'll discuss the New York Times branding of the new Texas Congresswoman Mayra Flores as a far-right Latina.
But first, we actually have some good news for you today. Could that possibly be true?
I know.
The Hill is reporting that gas futures fell more than 10% Tuesday and are down 22% since June, raising hopes that gas prices could take a tumble in the coming weeks. Business Insider reports that gas prices have fallen modestly for the last 3 weeks as consumption for fuel hits its lowest point for this time of the year since 2014. According to one expert energy analyst, we could see thousands of stations in the South falling back under $4 a gallon in places like South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, and more. Now, the current average for gas prices in the U.S. is $4.80 a gallon, down from $4.88 a week ago, still elevated compared to the year-ago average of $3.13. Which is just a massive jump, but hey, It's coming down a little bit. So
I gotta give Biden some credit. Okay,
think so?
I'm gonna give him some credit. I gotta be fair. I gotta be reasonable to lend to credibility. I've criticized them a lot, and especially with the gas rising and the inflation, and not feeling like they were doing anything, and it's gonna get worse, and a recession's coming. So if I see a drop, I'm gonna give that to him. I could see you're not convinced,
Robbie. I just
Robby.
don't know that. It sounds like it's okay. Enough people are not rushing the pumps anymore.
Yeah.
So that brings the price down a little bit. That factors out of his control. But okay, fine. I guess if we're going to, some of the factors were out of control to begin with. He gets blamed.
So we got to give him some of the credit.
Yeah, I guess.
Right.
It's still so high though.
No.
Do you remember when gas was? Well, you're a little bit younger than I am.
Well, I'm
quite a
also
bit
from the
younger than
Bahamas,
I
and
am.
our gas is much more expensive. So I can never remember y'all's low prices.
Yeah, when I started driving in the mid-aughts, I think it was under
The mid-aughts.
Yes, we freaked out when the price went above like $2 a gallon.
$2.
Yeah.
Gas in the Bahamas has always been above like $5 since.
Really?
My whole time of life. Yeah. So.
But does it take like not very long to drive from one end of the island to another? I have no idea how large the Bahamas are.
So Nassau, the island I'm from in the Bahamas, is 21 by 7 miles long. It's not very big. It's not a big island, but we have to drive everywhere. There's no public transportation is not the means, so people got to go everywhere. You do feel it, and the minimum wage is like $5.25. So the gas being that we felt it. So I've never known it to be particularly low, but I understand problems are relative. That doesn't change or diminish the seriousness of what the gas prices are here right now in America.
Well, speaking of President Biden's response to high gas prices, yesterday he weighed in on inflation and the gas issue while he was in Ohio and blamed, who else? Vladimir Putin.
We got a long way to go because of inflation, because of I call it the Putin tax increase. Putin, because of gasoline and all that grain he's keeping from being able to get to the market. Now I'm fighting like hell to lower costs on things that you talk about around your kitchen table.
No, I won't.
Putin. Meanwhile, those in Biden's camp are growing more and more frustrated over the president's lack of action on Roe, gun control, rising costs of gas, food, other goods that have frustrated the public for months, because it's not just, it's ridiculous to put it all on what Russia is doing. Yes, Russia started this military conflict with Ukraine, and that was bad, and that does bear some responsibility. But then our policy response to the invasion of Ukraine,
it impacts
we put embargoes and sanctions and such things on Russian products. Did not affect Russia very much at all, from what we can tell.
Russia kept on trucking.
Right. That's exactly what their export prices are up because these sanctions never work. They never work. So maybe they worked once. I don't know. Maybe sometimes they work. They don't seem to ever work.
Yeah.
So it's not hurting Russia. It's just hurting us.
Right.
So you can't say it's just Putin when, yes, it's Putin, but then the policy of the U.S. government to continue this conflict and to send more weapons to Ukraine and all of that. Which again, I'm sympathetic to the people of Ukraine. I don't want them to be conquered, but are the American people willing to pay high prices to have this conflict going indefinitely?
And I don't think that's the question they've been asking. Like, maybe they should. I feel like there's been a little bit of an avoidance of that question and determine what is public support for this. It seems, and don't get me wrong, I feel like initially there was a large outcry for Ukraine, and I think people were very in support, maybe in larger numbers, for going and doing something. I would be curious to see now how the country responds now in the wake of inflation and a possible recession, and see if they still feel the same way about that move. And I guess in terms of Biden saying he's fighting like hell to do something about gas prices, I guess I want to know, fighting like hell, how? Because every time we've discussed this and we've discussed the Biden statement, it's just him, last time, well, first he blamed Putin, and then the last time we addressed it and he had a statement, it was blaming the gas companies themselves, or maybe like the small owners of the gas stations.
Or saying everybody's got to sacrifice because it's a war effort.
Right.
Like, really? It's a war effort? Who voted for a war? Where was that? When was that vote held? Were the American people consulted on this? No one signed onto this.
Yeah.
And it's just being done. It's being done without the consent of the governed.
I think there has to be a lot more concern for working class people. I think it's very easy. Don't get me wrong. I'm very for ideological commitments. I am not pro Russia invading Ukraine and what's happening, but I think you have to recognize, when it comes to inflation and gas prices and the ways in which the American people are affected on a daily basis, you can't just dismiss it as that's a price we're willing to pay, to do this, if it doesn't affect you the same way. Because Biden and the people on the Hill and the politicians are not the ones that
doesn't affect them.
Exactly.
Oh, they're driving their Teslas, and that was their answer.
Yeah, that was
Who cares if how high gas prices are if you have a Tesla?
Right.
What an insulting thing to say to struggling voter, to workers, to small business owners, to people who drive trucks, all of that kind of stuff. You can't even get a Tesla.
Especially in the same breath of recognizing your public infrastructure is bad. And especially what we're seeing with flights, the bridge collapsed recently, all these different ways. If you're going to say, all right, gas prices are up, inflation is happening, these things, it's wartime, and we should, in some way, I guess, get used to these kinds of standards. And I need to see you doing more to increase the public, these public transportation available. Because the reality is, a lot of Americans rely on driving. They have to, right? They have to. We don't have the best public transportation system. Places like New York City, we have it, and I wouldn't say it's the best, but at least we have it. But that's not most of the country.
The DC public transportation system is collapsing in and of itself. It's the most pathetic.
Right.
That's a whole other story. But the war talk, doesn't make sense because, we were not attacked.
Yeah.
And the nation that was attacked is not one we're committed to defend.
Yeah.
So what exactly are we doing? What is the long-term strategy? And it's clearly not working. Russia is winning this war slowly but surely. I mean, their performance was not as
what they wanted
good
it to be.
as expected. They are taking casualties. They're getting bogged down. Sure, but they are slowly taking the territory that they set out to take.
Right.
So it just doesn't make sense.
I can't say definitively what the move is. I try to be fair and recognize I am not personally impacted by what happens in Russia and Ukraine, but a lot of people are. I know I was just in Chicago the other day visiting a sorority sister, and she lived in the Ukrainian village, and I realized okay. We have a huge. This definitely has a real impact on people. So I don't want to be quick to say America shouldn't do anything. Yeah. But at the same time, I do think there needs to be more of an effort to include what is the country's opinion at large, because I don't think they've done enough to consult whether or not the American people support this, whether or not the American people have said, okay, I'm fine with the trade-offs of supporting Ukraine and what this will mean for us financially and economically. If I felt like they were taking that into more consideration, I could better get on board with what Biden's agenda is. But I'm not hearing.
And if Congress had to take a vote on it, then maybe we'd hear from the people. But since Congress has just given up its role as being the one that declares war, because that's how it's supposed to be. The legislative branch declares war, and then the president just carries it out.
Right.
But Congress has completely abdicated its policy-making responsibilities to just be either a rubber stamp for the executive's agenda or a thorn in the executive side if it's an executive from the other party. So this is the result. No accountability on these kinds of things. But this was supposed to be a good news segment. The good news is gas prices coming down.
I gave Biden his credit.
All right. We'll tell you what's on our radars coming up next.